Welcome to Michigan Central, and welcome to Pulitzer on the Road. We could not be more honored and happier to be the host for such an incredible program. The conversation tonight is not, for me, not just one that's about the world we're in and the cultural criticism and its role and its importance and the experience that this incredible array of Pulitzer Prize winners and finalists brings, but it's also about the essence of the place that you're in and the fact that we are bringing to this incredible building and place back to life to have these important conversations and have that be a part of really the spirit and the discourse in Detroit.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, my name is Nicole Avery Nichols, and I am the editor and vice president of the Free Press. And on behalf of our newsroom, past and present, we're thrilled to welcome Pulitzer on the Road to the Motor City for this exciting and important conversation about criticism. When you read the works of the panelists that'll be featured here tonight, including the Free Press's own Lyndsay C. These attributes vividly spring forth, and we, as readers, are better off for it.
So Pulitzer on the Road the idea is to give new life to Pulitzer-winning work, especially the journalism sometimes fades away after it's won a Pulitzer, and we like to revive it and bring new eyes to it. We also like to showcase what goes into producing this work. I don't think people understand the amount of risk, money, time, creativity, difficulty that goes into producing Pulitzer-winning work, and we like to show you that through conversation. We like to highlight the difference between news reporting and opinion reporting, in this case, criticism. The importance of writing for a local audience and a national audience, and how that might be different. Some of our panelists have done both. How has social media affected, especially criticism, when, let's face it, we're all critics on social media, right? So how do they stand up and stand out?
I want to just kind of jump in. You know, this is a really kind of, so I'll give you a kind of like, you know, backstory. Like when I became dean of the journalism school, I was in a forum with a bunch of other deans, and I had to introduce myself, and I said, wasn't on my radar to ever become a dean, and everyone started laughing, and I didn't know why, and they said, this is not on anybody's radar to do this job. It's not like a 12-year-old is like, I'd like to be an academic dean when I grow up. And so criticism is not quite like that, but it is a really particular kind of undertaking, and so I see a lot more people who are interested in kind of going into commentary and different kinds of things, but specifically criticism, it winds up being something that finds you, if I'm correct, it finds you probably more often than you find it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious if we could start with Lyndsay and kind of work our way down, if we could just start with your origin story.
Sure. For me, it definitely was sort of a happy accident. I still consider myself very new to this and new to food writing in general. So I was actually a beauty editor. That's how I started my career in New York. I was in, just beauty and fashion. And when I moved here to Detroit, I was hired as the managing editor at the local magazine out here, Our Detroit, and I kind of was a generalist there. So I eventually was the interim editor, and then I proposed a position for a dining editor there. At the time, the editor retired and the restaurant critic retired, and so I sort of inherently just started adopting certain responsibilities, and one of those, I kind of raised my hand for it, to write the restaurant reviews each month. I eventually pitched them the idea of having a dining editor position, not just a restaurant critic, which is interesting that I kind of pitched a broader role and then ended up, kind of zeroing in on the criticism piece. But yeah, that's how I got my start in food writing, and managed their entire food section for about 2 years. And then the restaurant critic at the Free Press kind of reached out to me and let me know that he was going to be stepping down from his position, and thought that I could be a nice fit for the Free Press. And I've been there now going on my 4th year.
I mean, I'm a person who criticism found because I didn't know it was even a job before. I mean, I will say it found me early. So I'm also, there's a few things about me. I'm literal minded. I'm like a spandex amount of naive, so that if you're young and impressionable and these things are already true about me, and a teacher tells you that you're good at a thing and that the thing is a job, I'm like, oh, well, I'm all set. I don't have to think about what I want to be when I grow up. I'm in the 8th grade and criticism's a job, and you just told me I was good at it. So I'll just do that.
I'm just gonna ride that out, right?
I don't know. I mean, but I'm also the downside, of course, is he's like, you pick a bad job, like an illegal one or something. You're good at this illegal job. I'd be like, okay, great. I'm killing people for a living. That's what I'm going to do. But I wrote, he gave us an assignment to watch this TV movie called April Morning. I don't know if anybody remembers it. I believe it's a Hallmark Hall of Fame.
Wow.
With Chad Lowe and Rip Torn and somebody else who I cannot remember. Wow. The lead role is neither one of those. Anyway, we could read the book or watch the show. I did both. And it was just a book report. Like, just prove you watched or read the thing. And I just wrote about how I hated both. And definitely thought the movie was worse than the book. And my teacher was like, you didn't do what I asked you to do, but you did do a job, and the job is called this, and you did a pretty good job at that. And that was it. I mean, I wrote for the paper in middle school, high school, college. I'm from Philadelphia. I wrote for the Philadelphia Daily News when newspapers used to try to attract young people to read them by letting young people write for them in these special sections. That changed my life. I don't know if there are resources for papers to do this. Where's Nicole? It has to happen. They got to stop whoring themselves to young people by like trying to be where they are. Just this shit will find them. Sorry. Anyway, it found me. It changed my life and like 10 other young people's lives. And we didn't know that the thing we were doing was going to be the thing we would wind up doing, but we're mostly all still doing it. And that's enough, Justin. Sorry.
It's funny. I didn't know that we had certain points of overlap. I was a teen movie panelist for the Orange County Register, my hometown paper, and I was like 16 and so too young to see R-rated movies, but they had to wait, but they kind of bumped me up because like, oh, we like this guy, we'll give him a chance. And then mine was this high school production of The Crucible that I tore to shreds, which was terrible. And my English teacher was like, you could, sort of, so it's funny. I feel like every time the Pulitzer winner and finalists for criticism are announced every year, there's a running social media joke. Somebody will tweet, no, that person didn't win for criticism, that was my mom who won. So it's just every year without fail that joke is made. And I mention it because I came from a family of not just my mom, but just,
Oh yeah, that is true. That is actually deep. That's true.
It's true, and it's just like very vociferous, argumentative, givers of opinion. I was not like that. I was the quiet peacemaker in my family, or so I in retrospect, that's how I feel. And so it's kind of weird to me that this became my job. And now obviously criticism entails more than just, ranting and getting mad at things, but I feel like I kind of internalized some of those family dynamics and just that spirit of debate, and sort of it kind of poured out just, and for me, into movies. I fell in love with movies and I didn't know what to make of them, and I wanted to know, so I just started reading movie critics and I started getting addicted to, their work, and from there I was like, this would be fun to do. And so I started writing film reviews in high school, college, went to Variety as an intern, so interned at Variety, the Hollywood trade publication. Really great experience there. LA Times, New Yorker, and that's kind of my, in a nutshell.
It's funny, like, because the pleasure of reading you, though, is that you are really deliberative. And it's not like you're peacemaking, like you're holding anything back, but you are so conscious of, it seems you read as being very conscious of what it means to practice criticism on a thing that living people have made. But it's fair, but it's not like, I love the care of your work. Anyway, but the whoever you were when you were 7 or 8, or watching all the whatever was happening in your household, not wanting to participate, that's kind of in the work in a fascinating way.
Thank you.
Not to be your shrink or anything, but I'm just saying.
We're already here. Like, tell us about your relationship with your mom. Writing criticism is kind of easy to take something down, really difficult to kind of create something. And so I wonder, what is the thought process? What is the kind of threshold point where you go like, okay, I see the effort here, but this still sucks, Or is there ever a kind of grappling with, even bad art generally takes a lot of effort, or even a really bad meal, this person still put a lot of effort into creating. I guess I'm asking about the role of humility in it.
I guess, to me, that's where culture kind of plays a role into the work, I think, because, I haven't written that many negative reviews, but the pieces that I have written, I think what I factor into the equation is how the restaurant or the chef or the food plays into the context of the city. And sometimes, or at least in the restaurants that I have reviewed poorly, they don't care about the food. That, what you're describing, that hard work, that grit, that care, that passion doesn't exist. And it really is a place that feels like, what would you call that, a money grab? And it feels like that care is not there, and that tends to show up in the food. And so it makes it easier to write a review that is critical of a place and doesn't feel like you're punching down. It just feels like you are responding to the lack of care that they've put into the business, to the experience, to the food. It really just trickles down. So at least I think that's how it's shown up for me.
Same thing. It's so, it doesn't, okay, sometimes it's also different with a restaurant in when it comes, the difference between a restaurant and a movie is a lot of movies, and you could, or like any big sort of cultural event where the thing is going to withstand how much you hate it. Either because you will be in a minority of people who don't like it because the marketing got to them before you did, right? Or because it just doesn't matter, right? How much I had disliked the experience I had listening to, watching, reading a thing, being present for an event. Because the event is big enough to handle it, and those are the occasions where I feel like I hated this, and I think now is a good moment to say so. Nobody will die, or be fired, or lose any money probably, because again the marketing got there first, and sometimes it feels good. I want to be clear about the pleasure that you get from not liking something, because it is easy in theory to just like take a lighter and burn something down. But you want to be deliberative when I'm not an arsonist. I I might be a pyromaniac.
That will be the quote. That will be the quote
pyromaniac.
from this whole thing. Wesley Morris, I'm not an arsonist.
But there is something pleasurable in figuring out how to deploy your misery, contempt, sense of insult, in a way that makes it clear to a reader that you're not just having a bad day, but that your time was wasted. Your money was stolen from you and is being stolen from many, many other people. If you can figure out a way to do that in a responsible and cogent and fair way, that is also, I mean, to be honest, like, if entertaining to myself, then you've succeeded. But it is really actually it's harder to rate a pan that doesn't seem like all I'm doing is getting off on not liking the thing. Because sometimes these things they really are, like The Little Mermaid is the thing that comes to mind, right? Like, I watched that movie and I could not believe this was some committee's idea of what we needed, and this was going to solve all the problems of this country, even though it wasn't made for, it was, made for the globe, but it's Disney's ancient American issues being sent around the world without any reason for, no idea how to remedy the actual situation. They put this poor girl in this role. She's not ready. They didn't write anything for her to do.
It's already starting. Right?
Sorry. Anyway, I'm going back there. But that was just one of those experiences where, like, I felt that if the movie were being honest about the thing that it actually was, instead of afraid to be the thing that it had been committed to remedy, I would have had a much less easy time trying to come up with a way to express to a reader why this allegedly healthy product is kind of morally deplorable at the same time.
Wesley, your review of The Little Mermaid, in which you still found there's that deliberative quality. You found something to praise in it too,
There's some good songs in that thing.
And then Aquafina's,
the worst moment in the movie is also the best moment in the movie.
But also, just have to say, if you want just one of the great rants of your recently, Wesley on Saltburn is one of my favorite reads of
another
love
movie
reads
that just didn't understand why it existed.
I agree. It's funny. The other day, my editor at the New Yorker actually said to me, you don't really hate many things. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it was a little disappointing to hear, actually. And I was like, am I going soft? And yet I understand it because, I think I started off my career as a real kind of like wanting to, I'm right there with the Pyromaniacs, Anonymous, with Wesley. And it's just, I was writing for Variety where there was so many, I had to review like everything. And so invariably there was a lot more chaff, And so as I kind of progressed through my career, it got to be more and more selective. And I just naturally found, well, I'd rather accentuate the positive. I'd rather write about the things I love or that I like, even if they're not perfect or great. It's a better use of my time. It's a better use of your time to know something you should see. And then, but it's funny, and not to make Disney live action remakes the punching bag, but last week I had written like 2 reviews that way. I was like, I'm done. I don't want to write. I took my daughter to see the new Snow White movie. And as the credits are rolling, I'm like, texting my editor, like, I think God help me, I think I want to write about this. And I didn't even hate it. I think I'm kind of very in the middle on it, but it inspired, and it's part of, I did feel like I haven't hated something in a while. And, not to steal culinary metaphors from Lyndsay, but like, I do think of part of criticism, if you're the lead critic for a beat, for a publication, you think about it as like, the proper care and feeding of the audience and the readership. And so that was sort of, so you don't, it's great to give them here's some great movies to see in my case. But it's like, but I also think like, and here's something really terrible that every once in a while to kind of cleanse it's like a kind of the nastiest palate cleanser possible. Yeah. So it's sort of, you want to, yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to add just one more thing to that because it kind of speaks to what you just said. I feel like I started talking about how culture plays a role into that, but I don't think I finished that thought. I think there's sometimes also where, in my case, a restaurateur, a chef or whatever, they do pour a lot into their work and there is a lot of passion there and there is a lot of care in the thing. But again, with culture, and you think about the context of the city, sometimes those two don't they don't function together, and we see that a lot in Detroit, in a city that's developing, and there are a lot of outsiders coming in, and they have these great ideas, but if it doesn't fit the city, then I think it lends for some criticism, right? It lends for but okay, cool, but who's eating that? Or, or...
That's what we do here.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's just thinking about how culture plays a role in that, I think.
Yeah, I will say that admittedly, I probably sit up in my chair a little bit more when something's being trashed or torn apart. And thinking there are like lines that I could run through. The easiest one that comes to mind was a restaurant review. I think it was in the Times. It was a restaurant that had previously served meat, but then had gone vegan. Yeah, you remember that. And the reviewer the critic had a line that said, "Vegetables were forced into a role that no one should ever ask of them." And I just was like, oh, that's going to send somebody to therapy. It's going to be there's no coming back from that. So, Justin, I want to start with you because you teach criticism. What does a person need to know about, a particular field or area before they hang out their shingle as a critic of that particular undertaking?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, about just in general, or even just before, be getting really negative, or just in general.
No, in general.
Yeah, just in general. Yeah, I mean, and my students are mostly journalism students, some film students from the film school at USC. So, and it's always, I always love having a few film students in my class, at least because they know their stuff. They have more of a sense of film history. But I also want to tell people, when I first started writing, I didn't have the deepest sense of film history. I sometimes still feel like that can always be better. So don't be afraid. I always just, I tell them your goal is to not, I don't know if this is always the best advice to give to people who are first starting out, but I think it's a good thing to instill in them from the beginning, which is that, yes, I want to know what you think of this. Do you like this or do you dislike this? But I'm reminded of something, I don't know if, God, Wesley, help me. If it was Manny Farber or something who said this, that's in some ways that's the least interesting question.
Yes,
or it's almost like, tell me everything about the movie, and if you must, tell me, do you like it or not? Right. And that's, I don't want to overemphasize that because I do think it's important, there to say, but I want to, I'm more interested in something that kind of evokes the experience of watching something or reading something, and that's a trickier thing to do, and that is something that distinguishes just thumbs up, thumbs down mentality from I think the criticism that we want and try to practice. Yeah.
I do think that what Justin is identifying in terms of, it's a really tricky tension, especially when you're doing it at a newspaper. I worked at the San Francisco Examiner and then the Chronicle, then the Boston Globe before I got to New York. And there was always a tension between an editor and me, at least initially, right? Because sometimes you have to train an editor and an editor has to train you in terms of how your relationship's gonna work. And sometimes that training is about the editor knowing the readership of the specific publication, because I've only ever, before the Times, I would say that I practiced my job for the city in which I was living and writing. And so there was learning how to do it in that particular, I would say, local way. to the extent that that was relevant. But then there's also the fact that I'm me and nobody else is me. And nobody else is Lyndsay or you, Jelani, or Justin. Like we're all bringing our own personal situations to bear on this work and our response to it. And the way I've always appreciated the way the job functions is we are glorified versions of y'all, right? Like we are people whose job it is to hopefully give a civilian moviegoer, music listener, reader a framework of understanding what it is they just went through or felt or didn't feel. What even narratively can somebody just lay out the plot for me? So there's a lot of responsibility just in terms of the relationship between you and the subject. If we're talking about a single work, actor, director, author, painter, whatever, and then your explanation of your feelings about that thing for a reader is really important. But I think the primary thing that I'm thinking about is like what happened to me. Like what did this thing do or not do to me? And not selfishly, right? Like, I mean, there's a kind of transparency you want to practice. I could write a whole review and never mention me, but you're feeling a sensibility, a voice, some ideas about the thing, and then the thing in a world, in the larger world in the United States, if we're talking about an American movie, or in the context of the person who made it, the genre it's operating in, something along those lines. But fundamentally, like, we are the prism through which this work is being refracted. And then I don't know if this is a mixed metaphor because I'm using a period to start a new thought. But then we're also this conduit between your experience and our experience. And how do those experiences communicate or understand each other? And how does my experience help you understand yours? And then sometimes if you're lucky enough to like be at a dinner party or like at an event like this, like how does your experience inform my experience if we're going to talk about something you saw, watched, listened to, or read, or ate?
I love that you're saying this because this is a thought that I had when I was preparing earlier today, and I couldn't articulate it as beautifully as you just did, but I think that is so spot on, and it makes me think about how many of us do this? You are on Instagram or you're on some platform on social media and you see something and the first thing you do is you go to the comments and are like, somebody's got to be thinking what I'm thinking, right? Everybody does that now, and it's like, I came here to see that somebody else felt the way that I felt. Or you'll just look at the likes on that comment, you know? Yes, 2,000 people felt the same way that I felt. And I think that is sort of what a critic does, is that we reflect what you're thinking, or we represent the opposite of what you're thinking, and it kind of makes you, it makes you feel smarter. I think we exist to sort of make people feel smarter. It's like either they totally resonate with what we're saying, or they're like, absolutely not. I thought so differently about this, and how could you? We really, I think, exist to make people think and process and relate or not relate, and it's really cool that we're able to do that.
I'm curious, are there any kind of particular ins and outs of food criticism that you've picked up, over the time that you've been doing this? And like, oh, okay, when I first started out, I approached this way, but now like I have a different approach to it.
Yeah, well, it's really funny. So again, I feel very new to this. And when I stepped in at the previous publication that I was at, to do the restaurant criticism. I actually was actually hiring freelancers to write the restaurant reviews each month. I wasn't actually writing them myself, and so I was editing them. And I remember assigning a review to a writer who was brilliant. She knew way more than I did, and she turned in her story and it didn't have any quotes in it. And I remember being like, where is the reporting? Not realizing this is criticism. She actually did the right thing. And I was like, hey, can you send this back to me with some quotes? And she probably was like, what is this lady talking about? And she did it. But in hindsight, I'm like, good God. So she didn't turn in a review. She turned in a reported piece. And now I'm like, man, I've learned some things. So that's my early days. I think over time, one thing that I'm actually still working on, I think, is taking a hard stance. I think we tend to, or at least I do. I mean, Justin, I think I'm a lot like you, where I am not I don't hate a lot, and I kind of see the silver lining in a lot too. And I think sometimes that might be my downfall as a critic, because I'm not saying this was really bad or this was really good. I'm kind of like, well, there were some bad things and there were some good things. And I think our role as a critic is to take a hard stance and let the reader know.
I think ambivalence, though, is useful.
It can exist.
Yeah.
I think it can exist. But sometimes it's like, but girl, what was your opinion? Was it good or was it bad? Just, did you like the food? Should I go or should I not? It's like, or I'll spend, or it's, you can tell that I'm not trying to play hardball, and I'm just like, this was terrible, terrible, terrible. Oh, but if you want to go, you should still check it out because the dessert was nice, And it's like, I think I'm still learning, I guess, that it is our role to have an opinion.
I also think that, because I very much understand that hesitation. And the thing that I have come to understand, I mean, I know I said all that stuff before about being sensitive to the people who did the thing because they're people and they, there's nothing more day ruining than having in your brain something that somebody said about you that is mean, or not even mean, just not nice or complimentary. And yet, these are people who are responsible, who've taken it upon themselves to feed us, make things for us to wear, entertain us. And if I didn't like what went in my mouth or in front of my eyes, I have to say something to either stop you or have you reconsider. Or, if it works, to say thank you.
So now Wesley is staging interventions.
But I mean, that's kind of an aspect. I mean, listen, I don't believe that I don't know what power is. And this another thing about this job, I don't have any idea what happens when the thing goes out into the world. That's not why I'm doing this job.
So, do you hear back from people, though? I mean,
sure, yes, yeah,
the
sure.
people who, I'm actually going to switch this. We've talked about things that we've trashed. Is it ever awkward when you hear back from people about something that you've praised?
Meaning what, though?
A film that you really, no. But, for me, I've felt awkward because, I wrote something really complimentary once, and then I saw the person and they were super excited to see me and I'm like, oh, it's great, you understand, so on. And the reason I felt uncomfortable was that, I am equally capable of trashing you. I'm not your friend.
It's funny, I have heard from, there was a filmmaker who shall remain nameless, who was somewhat notorious at some point at responding to his critics, including his or her critics. It's a man. But no, the thing is, he would respond really nicely. One time I had really violently hated this movie that he directed, and I'd seen it at the premiere. Sometimes as a critic, you're invited they bring all the journalists along to the premiere, and he wrote to me, but he was known for responding very politely. And he responded to me saying, sorry you didn't like the film, hope you liked the food at the party. It's like, and I wanted to write back and say, I didn't eat any of the food at the party. I had my
I'm a
ethics.
professional, please. I would never eat your party food. I was trying to leave.
I wrote something highly critical of Django Unchained. I mean, I did say about that movie that the N-word appeared so many times it should have gotten credit as part of the cast. But nonetheless, he responded to me by dismissing what he called a so-called New Yorker think piece about his film. And, you know, I kind of remember being like, oh, actually, this was early on in my time at the New Yorker. I was like, oh, I'm perfectly fine with Quentin Tarantino not liking what I wrote about him, but I should also be aware that, like, Quentin Tarantino is going to read the thing that I actually said about him.
Mm-hmm. You can't care about how what you're writing is going to be received, especially by the people who make it. Otherwise, you'll never type. You'll never type anything.
Also, this is true certainly of movies, which are, you know, often, of course, thought of as a director's medium, but they are also incredibly collaborative projects, and restaurants too, and everything. And the lesson that I've learned over the years is sometimes there's a weird kind of feedback you sometimes get, which is somebody who worked on the thing that you trashed saying, thank you, I was right. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And so you realize that being kind is not something that you should do by default. It's like honesty actually is more important than kindness.
They know.
A lot of the time, you know, and it'll be like the screenwriter who'd be like, or some, you know, the second AD or something. Like, yep, I know I should have done it right. And you pinpointed exactly why that thing sucked. So
I know of a situation where a critic wrote a really harsh review of a film that was then praised. The harsh review was praised by the filmmaker's brother. I was like literally was like, yeah, my brother knows this was terrible. I told him it was terrible. And now you saw it too. And I was like, wow.
I think I want to add, there's definitely that anxiety for me, for, you know, chefs and restaurant owners, but also there's some anxiety for me of if I praise a restaurant and the diner doesn't have that same experience, I'm a little nervous about that. It's like if I'm afraid that there's going to be a restaurant that I'm like, guys, this is amazing. This was so great. And the diner is going to be like, oh, I was there. And
You just caught them on the best day.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I also think that could happen at your house too, right? I don't know. I just feel like some of the pleasure of this ecosystem is that there is a tension in terms of whose feelings land in one camp versus whose feelings land in another camp. Like it doesn't feel good to not like a thing that everybody else likes, but I know at the end of the day that I'm being true to myself and my tastes, my priorities, my response, and it can be lonely. It can be really lonely sometimes watching everybody just get jiggy with a movie or an album that you just can't believe people are like flipping out over. It's just...
I felt that way about the last election, but no. Sorry.
All right, I'll drop the mic for you.
Yeah, there it is. So I do want to switch up a little bit, and you know, I'm obligated to ask, you know, as a board member, about you know, how your relationship with the Pulitzer Prize, if it changed anything or how things may have changed, you know, by winning or being a finalist, you know, for the Pulitzer, and you know, if it's something that the next time you sit down to write something, if that at all registers in your head.
It's just like a thing you'll never forget happening to you. Like somebody, you're the editor, Marty Barron, of the Boston Globe, called me and just told me that I won. And I was like, okay. And you know, the first thing I did, what's the first thing I did, Justin? After I hung up the phone.
Called your mom? Yeah.
I called my mother. And we just, oh my God, I'm gonna start crying. Sorry. We just, I just stood in the living room of my apartment and we just didn't say anything. And we just, but then I had to go back to work. I remember it was the weekend. I'll have to look. I'm like 98% positive that Saturday, because like Tyler Perry movies used to come out and they wouldn't screen them, right? Because Tyler Perry didn't, or Lionsgate, I don't know who didn't want what. But I'm assuming it was Tyler Perry because at that point he was the Tyler Perry. He didn't want people reviewing the movies before, I'm going to say we, because I'm also a black person, before we could see them. But I'm also a black person who doesn't like Tyler Perry, so I don't know where that leaves me. I came around though. I really understand this man, and he's deep, and these movies are about some really deep shit that is happening in him. And I couldn't see it. Is it true? Somebody is living in this man and it is coming out in these movies. I had to go review this Tyler Perry movie. And I don't remember 2012, look it up. I don't know what that year's movie was. I'm pretty sure it was a Tyler Perry movie. But I just remember being like, wow, I don't even know, what am I responsible for? Is like, nothing should change because I'm still me, but now I got to give this Tyler Perry movie the Pulitzer Prize treatment. And I felt this way about everything I did. I'd go to the bathroom and be like, I got to take a Pulitzer Prize piss. I don't know how this is going to work. And it lasted for like a month where I really had I don't know if you guys had this, even like everybody who gets their name mixed up, finalist, winner, whatever, you have to reorient yourself for a minute. I don't know.
Justin.
As long as we're sharing stories, we were barbecuing, and I get this phone call, and it was a weird situation for me because I had left the LA Times, which my work was submitted.
Right, you had just started at the New Yorker.
I had just and so I was getting to the New Yorker and being there, I was like, okay, that's enough good things to happen to me in my life. So I'm like, I'm set. Certainly for 2024. It's like, this is great.
Can I break in really quick and give you a bit of information you don't have? Which is that, what David Remnick said when he found out that you won? Which was like, shit, the stuff he did before he got here.
He said a version of that when he called me and was very, very nicely congratulating. He said, couldn't you have waited a year?
Exactly.
I didn't even know. Which was very, very nice. And it was just the most, and then I called my mom and my sister as well, because my sister is in some ways the most supportive person in my whole career. And Mary McNamara, who won in 2015, told me, she was my colleague at the LA Times, and she told me, yes, there will be this paralysis that sets in, and as Wesley described brilliantly, it's like, and it will take a while to shake off. And it was okay. It was okay for me. I don't know. Yeah,
it does disappear. The honor is there, but you have to do. I want to still do the job. I didn't, with all due respect to this lovely honor, I didn't know it was even an option when I started doing the job. And the reason I'm doing the job is not for accolades or acclaim. It really is to be this transmitter of feeling and thought about art and culture for people. And it's just a really powerful bonus that sometimes you get recognized for doing your job.
Lyndsay.
Yeah, so for me, I had a different experience because I didn't win. I was a finalist, which is still amazing. So I didn't have the call. And for me, it just...
Did you know before you found out? But when did you find out? On Pulitzer Day?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's funny, I was actually in New York, and I was at my cousin's house, And she actually had left, so I was in her house by myself, and I was like, let me just turn this thing on. I just was curious. I'd never watched the stream before. I really did not think. I remember when my editor told me that he was submitting my work, I was like, these crazy people. Like, why are they going to do this to me? Like, what? I really just was like, they just can't think I'm that good. I just was really just like, you're nuts. And so I just decided to turn it on just to see, hey, what is this even about? And when my name flashed across the screen, was I recording it at the time? When I saw my name, I think I started recording. But I like shrieked and dropped my phone. I just couldn't even believe that it was, I was like, what does this even mean? Like, what do you mean? I'm crying. I know. Don't even get me started. I didn't have the chance to call my mom, which is tough. So it was a whole new idea that, and I think, we've talked about the fact that food is not typically recognized, not even just in that category, I think across the board. I did a little research, and I believe I'm only the third to be a finalist, I believe, and the other two finalists were the same person. Like right, and he won, Jonathan Gold. And that alone, for me to be sort of next to Jonathan Gold that's mind-blowing. He's a giant. And I want to point something out. I think what's really special about the Pulitzers is that it's different than any other award, any other sort of program, in that it's not just for one story. Or, maybe you submit, for James Beard, for example, you submit 3 stories and you get recognized for that. This is for a body of work. And I'm sure that for me, there maybe was a story or 2 that kind of, tip things over. But I feel really proud of that. I think what's really cool is that we're recognized for our work and for our voice and for our perspectives, which are consistent through 7 stories or whatever it is that we've submitted. And that means a lot. And just to kind of quantify it immediately, that same day after that announcement, I got emails from book agents. I was contacted by, someone who was kind of doing some casting for Food Network. It was an immediate response, an immediate sort of success that you're just not prepared for, because you just don't even think that something like this is possible. So yeah, and then to sit at the computer and say, okay, now I'm gonna write this newsletter about, another Savvy Sliders opening. It was like, there's this but then it feels like, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but then it feels like you have to write this Savvy Sliders, copy, like the best story you've ever written. And it's like, how do I, incorporate new vocabulary?
You don't want to feel like it has changed you, right? Like, because you are still you, but you have to perform still being you. Because you are still you, but you have to perform still being you. It's like, it's a really interesting, and also, the biggest change is, and I don't know if it's got to be true for everybody who wins a Pulitzer, you're still you. But there isn't a day where, like, my sister, Pulitzer winner,
Right.
can't figure out how to open a can of tomatoes, huh? Okay.
It's so true.
I'm calling New York. They need to take this back.
So true.
I mean, there's so many moments in my life where it's either a punchline or like the esteem. I still feel like myself, but then there are people like, you work in a newsroom. It is an apex, and there are people who actually work on winning one of these. And I feel like the harder you want one, maybe the less likely you are to have it happen to you.
Yeah.
But it does change. You have an aura to people. And even if you can't see it or feel it, you sometimes can feel people being new with you. newly X to you. And that is an interesting thing to like not have control over how people.
And then there are times when you're like, oh, I think people don't know or they forgot. And like, you find, how can I like, and you're like, how can I ease this into the conversation a little bit? I don't know.
Wow, Justin.
Justin has his Pulitzer in his pocket right now as we speak. He dropped it on the floor and we were back. So I do, we have time for a few questions. And so we have some microphones that are going to be roving around. And while they're making their way to you, I do want to give you one little bit of insight, since my frame of reference is that, I was a finalist in 2018. I've been a Pulitzer juror, and I'm now a Pulitzer board member. And, the one thing that I can say about this on the kind of judging side of it, and this has been my experience, is that people take this extraordinarily seriously. And on the jury side, that's like the Hunger Games. The amount of information that people have to digest and come up with, their finalists, it's incredible. And then for the jurors, it is like a really distinguished group of people who, to, I think, our immense benefit, check their egos at the door. Like, everyone comes in and they're just kind of thoughtful people who are trying to say, what does this work do? What does this work say? Where does it fit in the pantheon of work that we've honored, and so on? And so there's an exceptional amount of consideration and thought, that goes into like everything about this. And so, unlike the restaurateur that you give a bad review to, we actually really, really care. So I think we have room for some questions.
Well, I'll phrase this differently for Lyndsay and for you two. Lyndsay, is there a particular type of food or ingredient that you hate, and every time it comes up at a restaurant or something, you're like, oh God, this again? And with you guys, is there, a filmmaker?
Not the aioli again.
Yeah. Is there a director or an actor whose work you just consistently across the board hate? Like, oh God, it's Nicolas Cage again. Jesus Christ, what am I going to do? Like, and how, because I know I have some things like that as a critic. How do you, if you have those, how do you deal with them when you encounter them over and over again?
I'll be quick. I don't really have that. I think sometimes I actually appreciate when I see, like, for example, a Caesar salad on every menu. Sometimes I appreciate that because it gives me an opportunity to really compare them all and be able to say which is the best or which is the worst. But I will eat anything whenever. I'm not, I don't really have an aversion to anything. Some things are obnoxious. Like, I don't enjoy when I see like silly garnishes. That kind of bothers me, because it's like, what did this orchid add to this plate? Like, nobody's eating it. It's silly. This isn't a tiki bar. Like, stuff like that. But yeah.
You always have to be willing to be surprised. And when you are surprised by someone or something that you thought you would hate, or especially director you're not a fan of, and when they surprise you, it's kind of the best feeling. And you feel like, maybe, it's just, you always just have to go in with eyes wide open. I firmly believe that, even if it's someone you are not favorably.
I love Adrien Brody. And I have loved Adrien Brody since 1999 when I saw him in Summer of Sam, that really underrated Spike Lee movie. But I don't really openly root for actors or directors or anybody. But we all have the people we love to champion. And Adrien Brody is just one of those people, like, I don't know. He's one of my actors who I love watching, because he's surprising and weird. But not crazy like Nicolas Cage, like desperate to be weird. There's like
Thank
a
you.
humanity in his weirdness. But I mean, I can't think of a person I don't like watching, but I love watching Adrian Brody.
Anyone else?
Cultural critics are, I want to say, kind of a rare breed, or increasingly so, especially on a local level. And I was just curious, like, if you had any thoughts, first of all, if that is something that you're observing too, but like, what are your thoughts on like what gets lost when there's not that many cultural critics? And just to add my experience, I feel like lately I'll see a movie and I'll be like, that wasn't that good. And then you look online and it's like 10 out of 10, like no one is saying, and it's a little strange. It's a little kind of a recent phenomenon, but I just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Bots. I think I really mean that. If not actual bots, bot brain, they're bot-minded. And I think that is some of the problem. But you ask a really deep question though, right? Like, what do we lose when we don't have a healthy critical ecosystem in this country? And I mean, everything, honestly. I think one of the things that really helped the American film industry spin around the toilet is that there was not a robust enough, seriously committed enough critical infrastructure to champion, call out, decry, lament in the biggest possible way these shifts that were happening in the industry. It was left to reporters. A lot of critics looked the other way. They were busy, legitimately busy writing about great movies that many fewer people saw, while the really important middle tier of filmmaking that gave us your movie stars, that gave us your Oscar winners, that gave you the Rorschach tests and mirrors of who we are as a people, like an archive of this country, we no longer make movies that do that work. And there now, as a result, are fewer people to even think about the little sliver of glass we get to like kind of see our full selves in. We have become anti-historical, anti-archival, anti-introspective, anything. You can see it happening in the government. They're just erasing people for all kinds of stupid reasons. But they're old reasons and they're very American reasons. You lose that, right? You lose people who are engaged with the practice of the proliferation of popular art forms. I would start there.
I think, I totally agree. I think on a human level, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where I think we need each other. I think humans need each other. You need to hear my voice, I need to hear your voice. We need to have that dialogue. And I think that criticism is one of the only platforms to do that. It's the only opportunity where you get to hear a voice, an opinion, and take it from there, what you will. I think the other thing that I think about a lot is that, so for me, recently actually, I talked to someone at the New York Times about something totally unrelated. It was about, social media critics and, what that means. But she quoted me as, I think it was the only Black critic, or maybe even one of the first Black restaurant critics at a major newspaper in the country. And I personally haven't been able to fact check that and confirm that that's 100% true. It likely is true or close to true. I imagine the New York Times fact checkers.
I was going to say,
I imagine that's
if it wasn't corrected, it is probably true.
And I think if that's the case, then that means that up until now, or had I not existed, we never would have had the opportunity to hear from a Black woman on where we should eat, like, or what is good in the dining space and what is, not so great. And I think that would really be a shame. I think that we as readers, and just people, we deserve and we should be given the opportunity to defer to a Black woman's experience, her perspective, her taste preferences, and not even just a Black woman, but a Muslim woman, a Black man. I don't think that position has existed either or been filled. I think that we as a people need to defer to people with different experiences, and we can only do that if people like me and people like us, this whole panel, exist in the roles that we exist in.
Can I say just one more thing about this? Like because you just reminded me, because it's in your question too, which is local, like, I don't know, it's like criticism being practiced on the work being made in a particular place in the country is so important. Like, it's not just Marvel movies. I mean, it is just Marvel movies, but there's other stuff happening in this country, in these towns and cities that need people to write about whether it works or not, what their experience with it was. You can't, and I mean, this is being recorded, right? I mean, I work at a place that's trying to like fill all these gaps for these small towns and cities, but it's not the same. Like, I don't read the New York Times to learn about Raleigh. I don't read the New York Times to learn about I read the New York Times for a lot of reasons, but it is not to learn about the art scene in Athens, Georgia, right? That should be Athens' job. I don't know really what's happening in Athens. I hope there probably are a lot of critics there, but I'm just saying, for example, there is a dearth of criticism being practiced at every tier of every art form and at every sort of art point in every municipality and town. I don't know. I mean, official, right? Like official. I mean, like not TikTok or X. I mean, like a person who is tasked with being responsible for covering a scene, who knows all the players, who knows the story of the art form or foodway of the place. It's archive work, it's history, and it's the present that is gonna like ruin our ability to understand the past if we don't maintain it.
So I would like to say thank you to our panelists, or rather our bellatrists. And I would like to say thank you to everyone who supported and hosted this, to Michigan Central, to Detroit Free Press, to the Knight Foundation, and Pulitzer on the Road, and I'm probably leaving people out, but everyone else. And certainly thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.
We'll have a reception that will begin momentarily. Thank you.
Thank you.